Hello everyone and welcome to Double Bits Workshop. So in today's episode, we'll be looking over the Longer LK5. I've had it for just under a month now, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So as you can see, things have changed, kind of lifted the curtain, if you will, from the last videos with the good old CNC Comgrow over there. I have bays set up in my garage, so one bay is set up for the CNC laser engraver, and then just one bay over is the 3D printing area. I also have my resin 3D printer across the way, same area, so that way I can control an ambient temperature and just an ambient environment. If you do end up looking at getting a 3D printer, it's not something you can just leave outside. You will have so much issues with it. A lot of people have tried to do that, or breezeways, or just really freezing rooms. You can get away with having a colder temperature room and working with a 3D printer, but you just have to keep it ambient, which means that whatever degree you keep your area at, it has to stay that degree. And then you can adjust your fans and everything to keep your hot end, which is down here, a certain temperature, or same thing with resin. Resin usually likes to just be warmer in general. So just kind of a note to keep in mind if you're looking into this endeavor. So this video is going to cover kind of what I've seen and what I enjoy about this printer. Having it been, I believe it was around February 18th, and we're March 14th. So I made the purchase of this printer on February 14th, so right on Valentine's Day. And I got it not too long after. It was about roughly 3-4 days after I did my initial unboxing of it, which is what you all saw. So that was actually shot on February 18th when I got the printer. And now we're sitting here at March 14th when I'm filming this, and this is all that has transpired and happened so far for prints. Now, the first and foremost things that I'd say with printers that's the most fun to do is immediately start getting some of the protective stuff and upgrades done to the printer itself. So one of the prints that my wife saw and thought would be great is a little dust cover for the actual touch screen. So that way if I am using the CNC right next to the next bay over, if dust and debris come over, it's not too hazardous for it. Now I will say this does vibrate a little bit in and of itself, but it will also take vibration from the CNC. So it is on little chunks of rubber that I put down for the 4 legs to help the vibration going into and also absorbing through both ways. And I've done a few other little upgrades to it. There's a bracket my friend printed off, that way it can hold the cabling up. I've got a couple other little things in and throughout. I've done a new print nozzle, that was the latest one, with upgraded fans. All of these things can be found on Thingiverse and all over the place. So kind of what I'm going to be covering here is a lot of what I've printed and just overall thoughts. So initial prints are going to be anything and everything that kind of helps out the printer itself. I did purchase this little gauge right here to monitor how many kilowatts is going through the printer. So if I do end up charging for work done with the printer, I can then reset this and gauge how much kilowatts have been used, what the going rate is right now, so that way I'm not undercutting myself. Because I can always just look at something and go, well, I could sell it to you for $5-10 for this little infinity cube, or what have you, if the Creative Commons are allowing that through Thingiverse, so keep an eye on that. But what I'm not really thinking about is the factoring of how much kilowatt usage it is, times on the printer. So let's say I negate how much time it takes on the printer and purely go off of kilowatt usage and the price of filament, and then I do a slight increase so that way that's actually profitable, because I can always sell something for exactly what it costs me but then there's no profit in it. And not saying I have to be 100% profit driven, but if you're not making any money, you can do that for friends and family, but at the end of the day you're going to end up losing more money just by having this in your care and in your home. So anything that along here, I still want to be able to make some kind of money for my business essentially. And I enjoy it, and it is fun as well, and that's always what you want to have at the end of the day, right? It's not really work if you're having fun while doing it, but you still want to see some kind of positive income from it. So this initial purchase of this product, after everything's said and done, taxes and everything, was about $350. So $350 just for the printer, not counting any of the filaments or anything else. So each one of the filaments, give or take, you're looking at around 20 bucks, plus or minus. I have gotten some of the cheaper ones, like this red filament was 15 bucks. The green filament over there was 15 bucks. That ABS was a grab bag, I think was 13 or 14 bucks. You just kind of got whatever color off of Amazon. The eSun and everything else is actually around $22.99, so 23, 24 bucks all said and done after tax. And that is this filament here. The white over there was $18 for the spool, each one of these being 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds. So just kind of playing with some numbers, kind of giving you some ideas here. What you can do with it is kind of limitless. So I have printed peg holders for my chisels, or these are also able to be used for any kind of pliers or anything like that such. This was a little bit of a failure, a little bit smaller in one regard. So for your pegboard, you can print this off, which is a 4x4 tile pattern, and if you have a bunch of these thinner safety glasses, they'll spool in and hold up. So you can kind of fill this whole area best you can with a whole bunch of safety glasses. It's cool and it's good, but it's a little niched in the fact that a lot of the rest of my glasses won't fit on there unless I get these generic, basic kind of from Harbor Freight safety glasses, or just the general type. But again, if you get good with any of the software, which most of it's all free, you can upscale this and have no issues with it. A couple of the other things that you can also 3D print are little bins like this, which are perfect for the screws and just miscellaneous little bobs and ends that you might have on your workbench or your desk area, anything that you have a pegboard. These are also a great item. These are found on Thingiverse, just at under pegboard. You can find numerous things. I had also purchased a 3D pen, this little guy here, and the intention behind this one was to fix other prints, but also it is fun just to kind of play around with. I have only one little thing, which I made a very haphazard, rough motorcycle just out of my brain, and this little pad here that came with it. I bought this secondhand. It's a minted or mint 3D 3D pen, and it came with some filament, but I also 3D printed this entire stand for it. So with this stand, I'm able to thread the cable through a little hidden trough back here, so that way I can have this hooked into a battery, or I can hook it into the wall, and this will just hook directly into the pen. I can pull out and then make whatever I will with the 3D pen. Or this is a silicone pad, so I can do all the work on it and it won't adhere to the pad, and it will transfer a lot of that heat around without damaging the surface underneath. This has a little spool holder in it. Another wonderful thing from Thingiverse. There's a variety of sites like Thangs and a couple other ones that we've done a lot of these prints, such as little green mustaches. My wife has made these, so they affix up to the top of your nose, and then that way for the festive season of good old St. Patrick's Day coming up here. I have also been a fan of different board games, but the dice always run away, so having a little dice stand or a dice tower, so that way you get a roll without having to run for the dice afterwards. A couple other things we've made. Because of the size and build volume of this, I was able to subscribe to a website called Loot Studios, and they had a, oddly enough, this is a cult mask that they had from their game. It's a board game that they had set up. Every month they have a subscription for about 15 bucks, and you get all sorts of different what's called STLs or files of what they've created digitally that you have the ability to print off on either what is known as an FDM printer or 3D printer. This is FDM, so it's a filament type. I can't remember the rest of the acronym at the moment, but this is a filament printer, and then I also have a resin printer. It is basically what you put in it to create a three-dimensional object. They are both known as 3D printers. This is known as a filament 3D printer. And because of its large build plate, I was able to print this mask all in one go, and I just printed it upside down on the build plate here. Some of the other fun things is you can get what's known as rainbow filament, and I'll kind of showcase and roll through a variety of different things that have been printed here at the end as well. But this kind of has a shimmer to it, using what is known as a silk filament, and then it also has a gradient of color that it cycles through. So it'll start with the red, build up through kind of a purple to a blue, and then turquoise, green, up to an orange, and then just kind of rinse and repeat from there, depending on the larger piece that you have to build. And it has a very nice shimmer to it, just depending on how the light catches it. My wife also had the idea to make these little fidget spinners, which is just kind of nice for anybody that has like ADHD, or if you're just sitting at the bank waiting in line, anything like that. You can have these very nicely tucked in your pocket, something to fiddle with, kind of keep calm. It's annoying very much having to wait through lines and such at the bank, or just in general anywhere in your day-to-day life, having a line that you're waiting at Walmart even, or anywhere. Having these little guys on the go are awesome. Same with the infinity cubes, something that you can just kind of play with as you're waiting for something, anything. One of the other fun concepts with the 3D printer is what's known as a print in place, which is this little box right here. So it has a spring on it, and everything is printed on the build plate, just like this. And then once you're done, you just pop it off the build plate, work it a little bit, and then it's ready to go. Has a latch and everything on the inside of the product, whereas this developer or creator of it put it on the outside so you can see all the inner workings of it. I forgot to mention, these little infinity cubes were print in place as well. So let's see, they printed just like this, and then were popped off, and you just kind of work it a little bit, and there you have it. Now, one of the Pride and Joy products that I had printed as well, one of my friends had printed it, and I was looking at printing it as well, is this an Oni Mask. Now, it's a revamp or redo, or remix as it's known on the website, from the popular game Cyberpunk. And the original mask was just a bunch of teeth, which that mask is also up there, but I enjoyed this one the look of this one as well, because it does still pull on the Oni setup for like samurais and stuff like that. And it is just a very fun mask. Now, I have created, you've kind of seen glimpses of it in some of my other videos, a Cyberpunk jacket and outfit. So this would also go with that same said outfit as well. So it kind of helps complete the costume, and the paint scheme helps kind of tie that in a bit. And all the paint and everything is custom by me. But it was a lot of fun to paint. This came out originally as a piece of white plastic that just printed on here. It had supports to kind of help everything, and the teeth printed separate off to the side, and then were glued on later, which made it nice and easier for painting as well. So that way I'm not trying to have to worry about getting in and around them. My wife also printed one, which is super cool as well. She was really talented and really good at just different styles of artwork. So one of the things you might have seen on the build plate as well, these actually just finished, and as you can see, they do pop off once it's cold. So each one of these, just a little bit of pressure, pop right off the build plate. These are going to be my upgrades of the little fan covers here. So I'm going to mount these up on each one of these fans, just to help with debris and random stuff not getting sucked into them at all. And each one has been dimensioned to be fit over a 40mm fan. So as long as you don't have any kind of shrinkage, or you accidentally play with the original STL file, and you can resize each one of these in the software known as Cura without much issue at all. It's kind of just a mild CAD in that setup. So you can resize these, you can move them around, you can even kind of blur them together. So if you kind of want to pseudo create a new item just using some of it, you can do that in kind of a clunky way. Otherwise, once you do learn the software, there's a lot more streamlined, easy ways to do that. Otherwise, you can use other free software such as Fusion 360, and then export it for personal use, recreate a few of these items as well, which is super awesome. And super useful if you have kind of just a mild understanding of engineering and just kind of how certain things work. You can have a lot of fun with those. Those are a lot more in-depth softwares to use, especially Fusion. The Cura that comes with this setup is a kind of dumbed down older version of Cura, but you can just download the full version. I would suggest doing that of Cura off of their website. So it's Ultimaker Cura is what it's known as. and it is a very wonderful plug and play, very easy to use software. You can also get expansions or just kind of plugins for it from the actual software itself. You can open up just kind of a little market on there and then download different versions for a measuring tool, so that way you're able to see in the 3D space how big it's going to be based on those measurements that they will have in there digitally for you. You can measure it with calipers, would be suggested, each one of your items, and you can then scale appropriately to know that everything will line up while you're printing. So as you're printing, print times on this, so like for these 3 items here, was 3.5 hours, to give you kind of an idea. And that's based on travel time of the nozzle moving back and forth, and just like a hot glue gun, just walking around and moving. You can then up your speeds and kind of change it, but kind of keeping everything in presets till you figure that out later. You can do a lot of damage to the unit if you don't know what you're doing in that regard. But if you just leave it presets and kind of learn, you can adjust those and kind of scale those based on your time needs as well as what you have set up to be able to do. Now, like I said earlier, I have done modifications to this printer in general. A few of those being 3D prints. My friend that also printed that arm printed this little hidey hole here for all the additional nozzles. BV3D is a wonderful resource for more multitudes of things having to do with 3D printing. He custom recreated these bins here, which also fit into the T-track that is the whole framework for the 3D printer. They just sit in here and they pop right out. Has all the tools and everything you may need, which is really awesome. My wife found on Thingiverse a little multi-use card holder / USB and SD card holder that all have different formations to fit in each one of whatever you're using, which is super nice. This same cover also has the holder for the stylus, which works really good with the touch screen. One of the small purchases I got on Amazon was a $5 purchase for an extender. So your SD card goes in here normally, but 2 things. I was concerned with the distance once I start adding all sorts of things, as you can see, and I was also concerned with eventually wearing out. That port is pretty much right on the motherboard, and I don't want to wear that port out for the SD card. So if this breaks or gets wore out on this end, I can just spend another $5 and replace this extender that also gives me the ability for normal SD cards, not just micro SD cards. So that was a nice addition. The fan kit that I purchased is this Winsin little fan kit here to replace some of the original fans, which were a lot smaller, and upgraded them to something that cools a bit better. This kit was about $20, which was not too bad. You can see one of the original fans is super tiny, and then another one that is 40mm is also just half as thick as these fans, so they're definitely a bit more beefed up. They are a little bit louder, just as a heads up. You can purchase what is known as Noctua fans, and those are a bit quieter, but these are kind of a mid-ground, so they are a little bit quieter than some of the competition, but the Noctua fans are about $15 to $20 a piece. So that would have been a lot more expensive to purchase 4 of them all at once. So just kind of keep that in mind, dependent on budget. Another thing I would highly suggest with this printer is you can find on there what is known as the LK4 or LK5. I believe this is the spool bearing or spool roller. This is super awesome. It uses 2 bearings that are just like skateboard bearings that then your filament rolls on, so it doesn't accidentally clunk and kind of roll when it gets lower. This will just fluidly keep it rolling nicely, which is good for vibration. Yet again, that will also show up in your print and your print lines. You'll start seeing a harsh line where it kind of skips from that bump. So one of the things to kind of keep in mind. Another fun print that our friend actually helped print for us before we got this printer. He printed this on his Ender 3 for the main core that's white, and then all the red bits I printed on my resin printer. Is this little go along kind of like tote bag of goodies for whatever you're working on for your projects. It's a little rolling toolbox, and then it has an empty chasm on the inside of it that you then have a cap for, that you can keep like a large quantity of screws or something like that, and then you can have all the little components to whatever you're working on in these little trays. There's numerous trays you can print, and the other fun, neat thing with these is that all that you need for the hinging is that they all nest together and there's a hole all the way through that you just slide a piece of filament in and then super glue the end so it can't come out. And that becomes your hinge. So you're not really having to buy super expensive, oddball, random screws and a huge quantity of them for one project that then turns this, what would be basically almost free or very minimal off of whatever you have in your spool and time, into a $50, $60 contraption, which kind of is where you can go with a lot of different things if you're not careful. But these are all based off the idea of what you have readily available in front of you, which is another awesome feat of ingenuity, prowess. So I printed a couple different ends. So this is on the resin printer. It's a little bit more heavy duty and just kind of fun for the general aesthetic. We were joking a bit about this looking like a health pack out of a video game, something that would just kind of be floating there for the main protagonist or whoever you're playing as a character to pick up to then heal. Just the color scheme, rather. Another really nice functioning item that we got for this area, or printed, not got, is this little drawer, or just a cabinet of little drawers here. So it has holes on the side to help kind of save on filament, adds a nice fun aesthetic. And then you have each of these drawers that roll out for whatever it is that you need to put in there. So I had kind of salvaged some bearings and some different types of bolts. That goes in there. This is all the additional nozzles that I had picked up for the unit, so if any of them do wear out, which they will eventually with time, some feeler gauges and some magnets all fit in nicely. So kind of one of those burning questions I had in general with this whole printing situation and everything from the get-go was, is this anything that is actually needed? Yes and no. So I have found a severe amount of joy, is a good way of kind of putting it, in the whole process, and having yet again another tool under my belt that can be used for numerous purposes. And it's not necessarily necessary, but the things that this can produce and the things that this can do for you and your shop are boundless. It literally comes down to either you or you paying a friend to be really good with CAD software, and then this build volume is the only limits that you have. I can print numerous things. I can reconfigure my head on here to use carbon fiber. I can also use different really high temp polymers or plastics that this can then be configured to print, so that I can print components that can go around exhaust manifolds. I can print all those little plastic clips and random things that you have to spend $50 to $100 to go purchase for your car. If you get good with a lot of different CAD software, you can create the parts you need right in front of you without having to try to look and spend hours and hours searching for that same little niche item online. And people have actually been able to make full-on livings purely printing car parts. Because even if you can find it, a lot of times if you have a little bit of an older car or a collector car, then you want a simple plastic bracket for a seatbelt retaining clip or something like that, you'll be paying hundreds of dollars easily for something if you can find it, or if you go to multiple junkyards. So a lot of people will end up going to these individuals that can CAD and may even have a catalog of old car parts that they have just CAD'd from the past and had in their repertoire, that then you can then purchase that said part. They'll print it and send it right to you, and then you can then install said part with no issues or worries. And even though, depending on your, has to be 100% real or 100% of the vehicle of that year range, sometimes you can also just fix a car that you've had in your grandpa's garage and then he passed and you want to be doing them right and finish that car up. This could be the answer. Same thing with resin. Resin will give you a lot more clarity and a lot more of a clean item, but you're going to have a lot smaller build plate unless you pay for a larger build plate. That's kind of the give and take with resin. And based on what kind of resin that you use is going to change a lot of the price point and use of the item. With that one, it uses a UV light, so the longer it gets exposed to UV rays, i.e. being outside, is also going to change its durability, unless you paint it or do something to kind of help that a bit. And there are some resins that kind of fight that, but ultimately it was hardened by UV light, so more UV light will just continue to harden it regardless of what caliber that you get. So kind of keep that in mind with the resin printer. With most of the filament side of things, your nozzle is around 200C or 180 at the lowest end, upwards to 230, 250C, which roughly translates to a really high temp. But if you do have this in absolute 100% direct sunlight 100% of the time, and it's basic PLA, nothing a little bit higher grade, that will also kind of degrade or remelt, because the sun is very harsh and very hot, especially if you're in Arizona or certain parts of like Nevada, or even out here in Colorado in a high desert area. It can get very harsh with the sun. So just kind of keep that in mind. A lot of this could degrade if you kept it on the dash of a car, or you made it and put it in a dash of a car as well. So kind of just be ready for that. But like I said, it can do carbon fiber. You can even do wood filament PLA, which is crazy. You can sand it like wood, you can stain it like wood, but you can 3D print it. You can 3D print it and have it readily available within a few hours to overnight at your fingertips, rather than waiting for that same amount of time to have it shipped to you and questioning if it's going to be broken or damaged, versus I can just hit reprint or change my settings if something doesn't turn out right, versus I have to go through the hullabaloo of returning it, hoping it comes back, or in some cases if I purchase it on eBay, I have gotten buttons, a shower curtain, and I've even had friends that have gotten shoes when they've ordered cell phones, or when they've paid for numerous other tools and stuff, and they get a box of buttons. Whether it's a shipping issue or somebody trying to be kind of shystery and send you the improper product on purpose to then keep your money or attempt to keep your money, that's also some of the other issues that we all run into. So kind of having a factory at my back, or my beck and call, or in my back pocket is definitely seems like a win-win and beneficial all said and done. Because if I'm spending roughly around $20+ for a spool of filament that lasts me numerous projects, as you can see, I'm only spending that money, versus if I wanted to buy this little container, I'm spending 15 to 20 bucks on the cheap end, if not more. If I want to buy a couple of these customized to my needs little containers here, I could spend anywhere from $3 to $5 per piece, or pennies on the dollar through a spool of filament and some time and kilowatts put into my printer. Now this doesn't take that high amount of power to run, and it takes next to no maintenance once you get it down. And as long as you stay within the confines of the configuration until you get a little bit more knowledge under your belt to make any of those upgrades or any of those changeovers, you're pretty much rock solid with the printer out of the box. Change your temperature a little bit on your filament and you're good. You're in the game. You're just running with it. And there are so many different things that myself and others have seen a need for that have created it. So you can also find numerous catalogs of parts. Brackets for that same Comgrow do exist to put on a dust collection for it, and a different type of shoe, as it's known, for dust collection, and whether I'm going to be using a full-size shop vac, or whether I'm going to be using a normal little shop vac, or that little handheld shop vac. There are multiple prints for that, and I can just print it right here, test it out, and nope, okay, I'll print another one, test it right out, and within a couple days I'll have the part I need, or within a few hours I'll have the part I need. But I know right in front of me, if I can modify it and change it and immediately work with it without leaving the confines of my home, all I gotta do is make sure I got some filament and I'm good to go. So more and more, if you're on the fence about it, this is something that I would see as an addition to a shop that would greatly pay for itself very easily. At the timing of this video, I have put me and my wife together 452 hours of use. That means while the printer's running, creating something, and taking it off the build plate. We have put 452 hours on this unit in less than a month. And that's just us being hobbyists and kind of playing around with it. This has had time to sit every once in a while. It hasn't been 24/7 running, pretty close. We have been running it as much as we can. But there has been 1 or 2 days here and there that we haven't had anything on the build plate running. So not only is it something like having a production facility right at your fingertips, based on if you know a little bit of CAD or if you just know where to search for the component that you're looking for. Like I said, a lot of people have probably created what you need or what you're looking for, which is nice for how long the technology has been on the market and at someone else's fingertips to kind of help create. And then a lot of people are very nice and gracious to just kind of release that for free, or for very cheap if you're looking at something that's even a couple bucks for that component that fits your need and your niche. A friend of mine has a couple of different really nice headphone sets that have certain parts that break on them, and they're known to have break on them, sadly, just in general use. And those same little clips and brackets, you can then 3D print and just put them on instead of having to drop 150 plus or even sometimes $300 on these really nice headphones that work and sound amazing, but sometimes a little bit of plastic right in the middle will break on them. You yourself can just take the screws apart and replace said component for something stronger material, and also sometimes a better custom fit if they don't fit right. There's numerous things. Now, I will say I myself have, as you can see, a varying wandering eye of things that I enjoy and things that I have a lot of interest in, and a lot of that will also play into me not knowing quite where my niche is myself for what my hobby is and my enjoyment. And that might even be one of the reasons that you yourself are watching these videos, is to kind of get an idea and feel, is this something that's worth the budget? And you have a little bit of money set aside to kind of see where you want to go with it. And I by no means was able to just hit the ground and start purchasing all of these. If you watch through my videos, I have scrounged, dug, and I've built, blood, sweat, and tears, my shop and everything else, and kind of from the ground up, any little bit of extra money that doesn't go to a bill or doesn't go into savings, I kind of hold aside and I think on it, and I end up making these choices and moves to make the larger purchases and make them available to myself. And that all comes from setting money aside. So I in no way am telling you exactly how to pay or use your money whatsoever, but I would suggest as well, if you're not looking for a production facility, this is another avenue that could be your hobby. And it is definitely something that is designed with the hobbyist in mind 100% from the get-go. And it has avenues and facets that can be melded or changed from that, but in and of itself is very much a hobby. So if this is one of those things that might turn into something more, this can be a hobby that turns into a side hustle. There are numerous things that you can get on, even Reddit, for example. There's a couple of different forums. They escape me at the moment, but a friend was showing me a lot of them where different individuals will get onto Reddit and they'll just put on their advertisements for, I need this printed. Here's the file, and this is how much I'm willing to spend. So if you have a 3D printer and you feel okay enough to open the file and make the print, a lot of other people don't want to take the time to learn the software or the printer itself, or don't have the finances to spend the $350 for the printer. But let's say you did have that money set aside and you made that purchase and you set these communications up beforehand and you feel comfortable enough with the software and your printer, you can then do said item for them and print off either a custom bracket or just something they found on the internet that's free and is Creative Commons free as well, to where they're not worried about you making a monetary value from it. A lot of creators are perfectly fine with you using their work to make money off of, and they'll put it out there as such, and they'll even notate it saying, hey, feel free to sell as much of this as you like, or some people will say sell it to a couple individuals, but please don't put it up in your store. There's all sorts of things. As long as you kind of play by the rules and just be nice about it, there are so many different avenues to make money with this printer. And you can turn something that's a hobby and something you may enjoy into that. Or you can make a purchase that's smaller. You're not dropping $5,000 to $15,000 on a CO2 laser. Those are amazing. Those are fun. But I would highly suggest waiting a bit until you understand the software. Even that laser over there has given me a great deal of appreciation just for the software. Lightburn is amazing, side note. As well as that company, I love Combro. They are awesome. But having that knowledge in forefront and not dropping $5,000 to realize, you know what, this isn't for me, was amazing. It gave me such freedom of use of the item, and because of that, not that whole sweating it and worrying like, oh gosh, I spent $5,000, I have to make this make me money, and that pressure, it takes all the freedom out of it and all the joy out of it. Now you're suddenly having to feel bound to what feels like a debt to pay back to yourself because you're out that much money. And let's say you did lease that. That becomes more of a hindrance and a headache if you're not immediately entwined with the item 100% of the time and getting to learn it and you love it. And let's say you're kind of on the fence about it. That's all the worry we have. And a smaller purchase like this or a smaller purchase like that to kind of jump into that niche market and see if it is for you is wonderful. We live in a wonderful age right now with the ability for technology to be at our fingertips. Something with this size of build plate and volume, you would have had to drop at least $800+ to get your foot in the door to even look at something that was even smaller than this. about 5 years ago. And the fact that this right now, the company Longer got together and took a lot of different patents and ideas and other components from other people and created this wonderful printer in front of us is awesome. Because even a CR10 from Creality, you're looking at around like $450. So this is $100 cheaper. It already has some of the upgrades like the silent motherboard and stepper motors that make this thing super quiet. I have upgraded a few things like said fans that have upped the volume on it a little bit. So I'll kind of give you a listen here real quick. It's not terrible. It's a little bit louder. I do have this set up in my garage, so I myself do not have that much concern for it. It does print cooler, and it also cools my prints a lot faster. So those are good things. And the upgrades for these are phenomenally cheaper than they were. It used to be 50 plus bucks for most parts and components. Anything goes bad, it was kind of a bad day unless you bought in bulk of the item. Now I can buy one of these NEMA stepper motors for 10 to 15 bucks. I can also buy a 3-pack for 30 bucks in the top end down to 25 bucks. And that also depends on Amazon, which has kind of changed a little bit. Some of the filaments have gone up in price. I will note that. Sadly, at the making of this video, those same filaments that I purchased for a little bit cheaper at $15, $13 have now gone up to $17 and $18. So just kind of be aware of that. Try to time the sales. I got a few sales on those, I will say that. As far as the eSun brand that I use for the black filament and a lot of the white filament that I've used, those are $22.99 still. And a few of those have a buy two get one free as well. So like I said, kind of keep in mind and look for those sales when they are at your beck and call. So hopefully this has been a little bit more informational. It's kind of been all over the place. I apologize for that. This is a wonderful, fun new avenue that I've kind of gotten into. If you do want to make a lot of the different little projects, kind of line out what you're looking at printing and see what you may need. One of the things I didn't think of right off the bat was one of these nice little screw kits from Harbor Freight. This I can't quite even pronounce. It's Lucasian or Lucasian. It's the 1440 kit from the M2 to M4 bolt kit, and this has been invaluable for the printer itself. Upgrades, swapping out different screws, making things a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. That has been amazing. If you do purchase a 3D printer, I would say feeler gauges for leveling the bed are a must, as well as a caliper, or calipers rather, is definitely a must for just figuring out what you have in the world and then translating it into the software, or what you have in the software making fit in the real world as well. It works both ways and are definitely invaluable for this setup. So a few suggestions there, as well as get a good spool of filament. PLA Plus prints a lot better for a little bit more. PLA just original is a little bit more wonky, a little bit more trial and error, but it will be cheaper for your initial investment. A lot of printers will ship with PLA rather than PLA Plus. I think what shipped with this was PLA, just normal, which was the blue. And I have just a little bit of it left. I kind of spooled it up for my 3D print pen, which has been fun to kind of play around with. One of the other suggestions I would give you is to only print in PLA or PLA Plus for the first bit of time. There is a couple different versions. ABS is also very commonly used. It does release a bit of a gas that is a bit more on the harmful side, definitely over longevity. If you're printing 3+ hours of it, make sure to crack a window and have ventilation. If not, seal off your printer and vent it outside for safety. It can become very harmful to your lungs and your eyes. So kind of keep that in mind. Certain people are also a lot more susceptible to others on that same note. So one individual might not really have any real issues that he knows of, but it is doing damage. Another individual could be printing for maybe even 10 minutes and just have the worst reaction in the world. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I'd kind of stay away from ABS until you've had a bit of time with the printer. I have one spool I haven't even touched yet. Just from what my friends have showed me and stuff, and a lot of what came with this 3D pen has given me a better grasp of that, since this is basically a mini version of a 3D printer in your hand, and working with it in about 10-minute increments has given me a headache and made me feel a little nauseous if I don't have a fan immediately kind of exhausting it away from my face as I'm using it with this little station or pad setup. If you do get a printer, make sure to buy extra nozzles. I have already gone through one nozzle in the 450 hours with the printer, and I do still have it. I ran a torch on it, but it had clogged. It took a minute, but it did eventually clog. Kits for those are $10 to around $30, depending on how many you get, the varying grades that you get. I just kind of got a full grab bag for 15 bucks off of Amazon. They're not super expensive, so definitely keep in mind they will wear out and you will need more. They are consumable. So yeah, hopefully you've kind of enjoyed a whole smattering of randomness, boiled down a bit for you still. If you are looking at having a lot of different upgrades, I will here in the near future to my shop, and just in general for these kind of little sections that I've set up in my garage, I will definitely say this is invaluable for all the little brackets, all the little things that I will be printing through it, as well as just the fun factor is out the door, off the roof, however you want to say it, above and beyond awesome. The other idea of it being more for hobbyists and potential of more of a side hustle or future like profit, this is definitely high because I can produce entire masks with this printer in one go. This print took 1 day, 23 hours, so just kind of keep in mind it will have a long time that this will be occupied, so kind of keep that in the pricing bracket. I can't pump these out over one weekend, like 5 or 10 of them, unless I had more of this printer, like more printers. So kind of keep that in mind before you go full production facility. You will need more than one printer over a weekend to make an order if somebody wanted 5 of these masks for some event coming up. And they just so happen to get your number from a friend and want to just, oh yeah, I need this order from you. I heard you can do it. Kind of keep that in mind. Just as a rough parameter. Hasn't quite happened to me yet, but I know and could see it happening to a variety of individuals. So before you immediately go knocking down everyone's door saying, hey, I'm getting this printer, I can do all these amazing, wonderful things, and then you get a whole bunch of orders you can't fill, just kind of keep that in mind. If you are printing multiple of smaller masks like this one, this mask only took 18 hours. So kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, hopefully this has been helpful. I'm really loving it, and I would absolutely suggest it to you if you have the money and finances for it. Like I said, the printer itself was $350, 20 bucks per spool. You get a lot out of the spools, and it has been very, very beneficial and helpful to me. So thank you all so very much. If you haven't already, make sure and like the video. Subscribe if you haven't as well. Hit the notification bell to get notifications each and every time I upload a video. Thank you all so very much, and have yourself a wonderful evening. This has been Double Bits Workshop.